And just like that, 2008 Yu-Gi-Oh! Was upon us. Perfect Circle format came and went in a flash of light and darkness. Ironically enough, the game would soon be covered in darkness, as we'll discuss in this video. The final event of Perfect Circle format was in January, and as any format, there would be an intermediate phase leading up to the next list, which would shift the meta along with new sets and cards. While said list would not arrive until March, there were plenty of impact beforehand. It may be similar to the impact of Elemental Hero Stratos of 2007, yet 2008 would be a whole different type of beast. Beast Warrior, I guess? The only release of interest in January was Duelist Pack Jesse Anderson with Grinder Golem, Phantom Sky Blaster, and Hand Destruction. But no crystals could match up to the legacy that was February 13th with the release of the next core set, Phantom Darkness. This was a huge set that added a plethora of new strong monsters and powerful spells. The new monster series and archetype would be Dark Counterparts and Yugioh, respectively. Even though Dark Elf existed since 2002 TCG, this was a true intentional series of monsters, twisted by the dark powers of Yugioh, like Dark Creator, Dark Nephthys, and Dark Horus. Out of the many monsters in Phantom Darkness, important ones would be Lone Fire Blossom, Gigaplant, Dark Grepher, Armageddon Knight, Goblin Zombie, Cyber Valley, oh, and Dark Arm Dragon, how could I forget? Don't worry, I'll get to that card in a second. Other powerful spells includes 6 Samurai United, a solid draw engine for 6 Sams. Allure of Darkness, a powerful draw card benefiting off dark monsters. Draw 2 cards, and banish 1 dark from your hand, with the caveat being if you don't have one, you must discard your entire hand. And Super Polymerization, which could fuse monsters on either side of the field, and it could not be responded to either, which wound up duelists coining the term Spell Speed 4. One card that interests me is Acidic Downpour, which acts like a reverse Gaia power. It's a card that would fit perfectly in old school Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm a bit surprised we never saw other negative attribute field spells like this. Cyber Valley is one monster I'd like to highlight since it does a lot. Not only does it act as battle protection, but it can let you draw 2 cards by banishing itself and 1 other monster you control. Also, yes, it has a third effect. By banishing it and 1 card from your hand, you could recur a card from the grave to the top of your deck. Valley combos with Machine Duplication and Dimension Fusion, and kept cards like Scapegoat and Brain Control in relevancy. But the big card had to be Dark Arm Dragon. By having exactly 3 dark monsters in your grave, you can special summon this 28k attacker, and by banishing 1 dark from your grave, you can destroy 1 card on the field as many times as you had proper ammunition. Thanks to cards like Foolish Burial, Armageddon Knight, and Dark Grepher, both of whom can send dark monsters to the grave, loading up the grave with darks was easier than ever. This meant Dark Arm Dragon, or Dad for short, or Daddy for longer, could be easily summoned, clear the board with just as much ease, plus worked with the widely supported Dark attribute. Since he banished so much, this also set up Defusion/Return from the Different Dimension playstyle, which facilitated OTKs, and hence the format and top deck name, Dad Return. It is not far off, pretty spot on even, to consider Phantom Darkness the invasion of chaos of the GX era, given how many great and meta-relevant cards came from this set, and just how meteoric this changed the timeline of Yu-Gi-Oh! And a little fun fact, during promotion for this set, there were a few cards shown to be incorrectly typed as beasts. I told you this is a different type of beast. There would be one event pre-list, and that would be SJ Houston on February 23rd. At this event, we would see the new powers emerge. Vincent Tundo would not top, but we would get a taste of the OTK strategy of this era. Named after the duelist, this would be Tundo TK, that use a combo involving Toon Cannon Soldier, D-Mock, D-Fusion, and Spell Economics. Despite all these cards existing for a while now, Cyber Valley was the engine that made this deck run for an infinite draw combo. Take that, strings. I guess Cannon Soldier's upgrade didn't make any waves at this point. Top 8 would be Billy Break in a tried and true Perfect Circle deck. However, it would be outclassed by 2 top decks. Second place was Adam Korn with Dark Arm Dragon, using the powerful new boss monster to his advantage. Cards like Strike Ninja, Armageddon Knight, and Prometheus King of Shadows would be used as testing ground for the upcoming top-tier iteration of Dad. And first place Jonathan Moore with Six Samurai, which was like the successor to Warrior Toolbox. Six Samurai United would prove to be what the deck needed to compete at top level, even if the deck would lose steam quickly. Honestly, the thing that interests me most about SJ Houston was a block of text from the event coverage on kperovic.com that read, quote, "Then Yugioh Adem attacked with Cosmo Queen for game. An elemental hero duelist Jaden up and smashed two-time Day 2 alum Harry Anderson with Bubble Man into elemental hero Mariner for game. And just when I thought it couldn't get any crazier, it does." Unquote. I really want to know what those two decks were. And then the list dropped on March 1st, and its main goal was to attack Perfect Circle / D-Rida decks. Entering the Forbidden Zone, we have Breaker, Faith, and Call. So yeah, two of them which just got off the list, find a one-way ticket back on there. Limited, Ryza, Advanced Ritual Art, Ojama Trio, and coming off the Forbidden status, Monster Reborn. So they banned Call but unbanned Reborn? Okay then. Semi, Cyber Dragon, Necroface, Book of Moon, Foolish Burial, Mage Power, Magical Stone Excavation, and of course our favorite Lad, which given the last format, this had to happen. And last but not least, Unlimited, Apprentice Magician, Janjo, Creature Swap, Pot of Avarice, Reckless Greed, and all three gadgets, because why were they semi'd in the first place? Going into the first post-list event at SJ Casa Mesa, we are introduced to the new prize card, Doom Caliber Knight, which is a solid walking single negate. It's like Exile Force, just with a mandatory activation and really good stats. I mean, it's no Magician's Valkyria on the waifu scale, but it'll do for 2008 standards. In the words of Phantom Darkness, Doom Caliber is fine. There was a variety at this event. Exodia implementing many draw cards, Rainbow Dark Dragon, which use a similar heavy lineup of draw spells, Novo Cosmos using Hinokagu Suchi, and Burn by James Pennicott, who was one of the first duelists to realize the strength behind Royal Oppression right before it would see high-level meta play. The idea being is that if it doesn't hurt the duelist's own deck, then it hurts every other deck in the meta. The top 32 would even see Gadget and Samurai. However, when it came to the top 8, Dark Armed Dragon reigned supreme. Chris Perovic would nap second with Dad DDT that, aside from a few substitutions, looks similar to what we recognize from the DDT deck. First place would go to Lazaro Bolido and the first incarnation of Dark Armed Dragon Return, which would combine the Dad deck with the popular D-Hero engine. But the deck that would solidify the strategy would be Jerry Wang's first place at the next event, SJ Columbus. Return had plenty of draw power, Destiny Draw, Allure, and Disc Commander, and then it OTKs with Return / D-Fusion. Point being was that this deck was too fast, too furious. The problem was that because of the recent return of secret rares, they came in droves, meaning it was actually tougher to get the secret rare Dark Armed Dragon, one of 10 in the set, and since it was clearly dominating the meta scene, the card was easily $300 or more per copy. And this is not counting other expensive cards like Crush Card Virus or Allure of Darkness, so the Dad Return deck would not be out of place reaching towards $1,000 for a deck. This is why some duelists would run Perfect Circle or Dark Nephthys instead. The deck was just filled with draw engines and boss monsters. You know what Dad does by now, but Destiny Hero Plasma was used more commonly now for if it sucked up a monster like Stratos with 18k attack, then it could only be crashed into by another Dad. Jinzo could stop Return from a different dimension, Demok was great for any Banish-based deck, and Dark Lord Zerado could clean up the opponent's field after Defusion, since its effect is that you discard a dark monster to destroy all your opponent's monsters. Fast and powerful, like you hitting that subscribe button if you have not already. Like Casa Mesa, there'd be other decks present. a classic hand control with a new twist using Dark Red Enchanter, Protector Gadget using Royal Oppression, Blue Thunder T45, and Protector of the Sanctuary for a familiar anti-meta gadget strategy, and second place Aaron Diaz's Kaiba Control. Casey is an eerily similar deck to Tundo TK, with instead of using Toon Cannon Soldier, Diaz incorporated Shadow Priestess of Ohm and more trade-in/allure targets. Ohm was similar to Cannon Soldier, just dealing more damage by using dark monsters only, which, given the climate, was not an issue with deck building. OTKs and FTKs were increasing as his format progressed. Come April would be Structure Deck, the Dark Emperor. These pre-made decks typically may have one or two usable cards like Pegasus and Graceful Charity, or Machine Revolt and the Gadgets. Dark Emperor is not an exception, as it is notable for two cards, Caius the Shadow Monarch and DDR, Different Dimension Reincarnation. Darn, Johnny Steps was so close to getting his own card. DDR is like Premature Burial, but for banished monsters, and given the increased use of the Forbidden Zone, this was a nice card to introduce. Caius, like the monarchs before him, is a heavy hitter due to his effect where he banishes a monster upon his tribute summon. And if it's a dark monster, 1,000 points of burn damage is dealt to the opponent. So not only could you get rid of a monster from the field and grave, you could also banish Caius himself for a game if needed. The same day would be a side set, Gold Series. This introduced gold rares, which, while not as special as ghost rares, is still a very unique rarity all on its own. Upon release, this card used gold foil on the name, art, and borders, which gave each card a striking presence. The return of secrets, the introduction of ghosts, and then gold rares, one can't help but wonder if the OCG's rarity philosophy is having an impact in the West. More importantly, the set included much needed reprints like Mirror Force, Dark Magician of Chaos, Janjo, and Crush Card Virus, a previous SJC prize card. CCV was still a very tough card to get, but hey, a reprint is always welcome. At the following SJC at Minneapolis is where Paul Leviton would win with Gladiator Beast built as an anti-dad deck. Grand Mole can bounce back any boss monsters aside from Plasma, and Shadow Imprisoning Mirror counters all dark attributes. This was a true top-tier anti-meta deck of Dad Return format. That being said, Dad Return still got second, with third going to Zombie, which used more DD Crow, and the recently released Goblin Zombie using its deck scraping and Witch of the Black Forest-like effects. Then all of a sudden was an emergency ban list by Upper Deck in May. We haven't seen one of these since the end of 2006 during Stein Monarch format. Only 3 cards were added, being Forbidden, Defusion, Limited, Return, and Semide Allure. The list was implemented because Dad Return was taking all the spots at SJCs, and to steer the game in a healthier direction. 2008 was the year Yu-Gi-Oh! Changed from its slower-paced roots. Much like how Invasion of Chaos affected Duel Monsters era gameplay to a faster pace, GX era's Phantom Darkness was compound quickness to an ever-evolving game. Dad Return format did see a few top decks: Dad Return, Dad DDT, Six Samurai, Gladiator Beast, Economics OTK variants, and other decks too. The March list made this environment drastically different than anything from 2007, a metric ton of OTK-focused decks with heavy draw and recursion engines. Even still, Duelist skill made all the difference on how one strings it all together, for it wasn't quite as streamlined as, say, Trooper format's Demise OTK, and at least you never had to worry about duels going to time. Those who were playing older decks like Burn, Perfect Circle, Zombie, etc. simply did not have the budget for the top tier dad decks, or they had to go all in the anti-meta strategy or OTK otherwise. With the increasing dominance of Dad Return, an emergency list had to happen, making this a short format, March to May, in regards to GX era Yu-Gi-Oh! But will the direction be positive for the future of the game? We will find out soon enough.